All right. So welcome everybody to this week's edition of Military Trailblazer Office Hours. Thank you for taking time out of your Wednesday evening to spend it here in the spirit of community mentorship and learning. I'm your host, Dave Albright, joined by the ever-present Dave Nava. We're both solution engineers at Salesforce and military trailblazers. Each week we invite a co-host or co-host to take part in this conversation so that we can leverage their experience, expertise, and unique perspectives. The focus for tonight's session is Trailblazing Together, pro tips for mentoring and being mentored. So if you're interested in learning about mentorship opportunities in the Salesforce ecosystem, this is the session for you. I'd like to welcome and briefly introduce our co-host for tonight's session, Tony Nguyen. Tony is currently a Salesforce consultant at Slalom. Additionally, is an experienced mentor, a lead Salesforce instructor with Correlation One, and a coach with Clicked. Also importantly, Tony earned one of the highest honors in Salesforce Trailblazer Community, a golden hoodie. This iconic golden sweatshirt is given to those who exemplify inspiration and innovation. It's great to have you co-hosting office hours with us, Tony. Welcome. Would you like to take a moment to introduce yourself further and share your Salesforce story? Because this is a good story. We like this one.
Yeah, do you actually want me to like just share my whole like the story, or like just keep it short?
No, go ahead. I mean, it's a great story, and I think it resonates with a lot of folks on here. So go ahead.
Okay, no, sounds good. I mean, thank you so much for that introduction. I am terrible at making introduction about myself, but I will give it a try. So I've been doing Salesforce for, it's kind of crazy to think about it, but like my 4-year is coming up. So I feel like it just kind of flew by. I started learning Salesforce during the pandemic. So in 2020, I lost my job as a restaurant manager. I was doing that for 5 years. So a little bit after college, that's kind of like, that was my life, right? Like that's all I really know how to do. And I was really good at it. And then when COVID hit, like restaurant industry got hit, probably one of the hardest industry. And, people start closing restaurants and, people getting laid off. And I don't want to say unfortunately, because I feel like it was a fortunate event, because if that didn't happen, I wouldn't have ran into Salesforce. But I lost my job, and then I heard about Salesforce from like a friend. And I was like, what is Salesforce? Like I did sales back in my days. I don't want to go sell again. And then just start Googling, and then I ran into Trailhead, and then from Trailhead, like read all the success stories. I feel like Salesforce does a really, really good job at marketing those success stories. And, a lot of time you read those stories, you're like, oh, like, is this actually true? Like, it sounds kind of like too good to be true. Like break into a technology platform, offer free, like all these good stuff. So I was just trying to find a way to like, level up, get my certification. And some of the class was like, $4 or $5 grand. I was like, well, I lost my home. I lost my job. I don't have $4,000 paying around. So I decided to explore some alternative way to get my certifications or training. So I did training with Pep Up Tech, which is a nonprofit. They've been around for a really long time as well. Did my training with them, or my first certification. And then I got a job in October. I got the job offer the day that I went out and celebrate my birthday. I was like going out to celebrate my birthday, and then Evan Decker, which is a mentor of mine, he called and was like, oh, hey, like you have time to talk. But I was like, like I was out, but I was like, I'm going to talk to him anyways. And he told me I got the job. And I was like super happy. It was crazy. And, ever since then, like my career just really kind of like took off. But one thing that I was also passionate about was that throughout my learning period, I try to get mentorship through the Trailhead mentorship. And I feel like the backlog is too significant, where like every single month I was getting declined. Like, hey, you're not getting a mentor. You're not getting a mentor. And it sucks a lot. So I told myself that I was like, the moment I land my first Salesforce job, I'm going to become a mentor. Regardless if like I feel like I'm ready or not, I feel like I have something I could provide or give back to people like myself. So I've been doing mentorship ever since then. Fell in love with it, and that's kind of the story, I guess.
Yeah, you underplayed it, because I read your article, and me with a heart of stone was getting a little teary eyed. I was like, oh my Lord, Tony. So I think it just really resonates, and a lot of people come here for these sessions trying to pivot, right? And you're the exemplary example of just the hard pivot, right? And coming into this and it working out. So thank you for sharing. And for those joining for the first time, we always like to briefly explain the purpose of these office hours. These sessions are an informal get-together for gathering with military trailblazers and allies to explore non-technical Salesforce career and branding-related topics to help you achieve your professional development and career-related goals. The next hour is intended to be an opportunity for collaborative mentorship. Everyone on the call is encouraged to step up and help answer questions from your perspective, which will provide additional diversity of expertise and experience to the answers given. Please keep an eye on the chat window during tonight's session. I and others on this call share a lot of great information there, including learning, networking, and employment opportunities. If you'd like to ask a question at any point during today's session, please feel free to do so. If you don't feel as comfortable speaking up, you can also post your questions in chat. We'll do our best to monitor the chat window and also be looking for raised hands. And finally, tonight's session is being recorded. If you'd like to share an attribution-free comment, please let me know before speaking, and we'll make sure that it's edited out of the final recording. So, Tony, with that awesome story, you know, you transitioned from a completely different career in the Salesforce ecosystem and becoming a successful consultant. Like I said, many of the individuals in the audience here are also navigating similar career changes. Could you share with us how you approach learning Salesforce with such dedication? You know, I was actually talking with someone on here, Emma, about like Nava and I kind of went at this with almost military precision, right? We were getting up at 3, 4 in the morning, studying for 2, 3 hours a morning before we'd even kind of start work. What kind of worked for you?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So when I first started, I treated it like it was my full-time job. Like, I mean, obviously at that time, a lot of people have the ability to do that, right? Like, I think nowadays it's a little different, but like during COVID times, there's really like, you can't really leave the house, you know, like there wasn't much things to do. And obviously like I was unemployed. So I treated it as my full-time job. I treat it as like, I believe in the story, right? Like that's what gave me hope. And I believe in the vision and the mission that Salesforce was trying to do. And so I treat it as like my full-time job. I think I spent the first 3 months before. So I couldn't get into Pep-Up Tech because they had like a really big backlog. So, you know, I tried to become a Salesforce Ranger before I joined the program. So I spent like almost 8 hours a day for like a month and a half, just learning by myself. And then after that, I spent a lot of time trying to connect with the community, like finding people, finding mentorship, finding people that can help guide me through this journey. Because like, there's so much into Salesforce, right? Like there's so many different directions, there's so many different paths. There's a lot of resources out there and it gets really confusing. So I was trying to find people who I can relate with that could, you know, ultimately help guide me in a certain direction. So I took like a learning, you know, mindset, and also at the same time, like, you know, so I wasn't born in America, right? So like coming to America, like I didn't really know English. So I had to learn a brand new language, and you know, I feel like if I can do that, I can do anything. Like when it comes to learning, and you know, one thing is like education is, we can say it's accessible, but also at the same time, like greater learning is it comes with a price. So when you think of something with like, say, Trailhead, where you can earn a 6-figure salary within a year or so, and you do it for free, I was like, oh, heck yeah. Like, why not? Like, count me in. Like, what do I have to lose for the next few months? You know, if it doesn't work out, like all I lost was time, right? But like the gang and the knowledge is still there.
Yeah, it's so funny that you say that, and I've said this on these sessions before. I was teaching myself Python when I was still flying for the airlines, right? And COVID was coming, and I kind of saw the writing on the wall. And my wife was like, "Hey, one of our friends does something with computers," and I called him, and he's like, "It's Salesforce. It's awesome." And I was like, "I don't know what Salesforce is, and I don't do sales." And it was just like, you know, same exact thing. And then, you know, COVID hit and I did the same thing. It was like 8 hours a day, 9 to 5 with a lunch, just sitting there on Trailhead, right? And trying to figure stuff out. And then, you know, you start working on it and you're like, I don't know what a master detail is. So that brings me to the point, and you kind of hit it. You get all this training for free, and it does. And especially the more you do Trailhead and the more you have a foundational learning, you can kind of start to expand it with Trailhead, right? Like, hey, I can go into CRM analytics because I understand the foundation of the platform. But you have to kind of find a mentor early on to kind of help guide you. So when you have that moment, like, I have no idea what a master detail is, you can kind of point to someone and be like, help. So can you share a specific instance where mentorship really helped you?
Yeah. I mean, I to be honest, like, I don't think I would have gotten where I am without, you know, everyone that I have met. You know, some are mentors, some are not. But regardless, like, you know, every single conversation that I had with people or Salesforce professional has been helpful in one way or another. I would say you know, I feel like a lot of people who are in the Salesforce ecosystem know Evan and I. We're like the twin duo almost. Like, we do everything together. So it's funny because, like, I have a screenshot of like him and I messages from LinkedIn. So I remember I was just trying to find like people I can talk to like locally. And then at the time when I was the restaurant manager, we were building out this new space, and across from that was a tech company called Calabrio, right? Software tech company. And I told myself, I was like, well, one day I'm going to work there, right? Because it was like a sweet building. I was like, that'd be kind of cool, like, to work at a tech company, like this sweet new building one of these days. So when I got laid off, and then I started learning about Salesforce, the first thing I thought about was that company. I was like, hey, let me go see if like they actually use Salesforce, and if they do, who can I talk to from there to learn from? So I went to like their LinkedIn company profile, and I typed in this word Salesforce under people, and then Evan name popped up. So I messaged him. I was like, hey, like, I'm brand new to the Salesforce ecosystem, like currently doing training with Pep Up Tech. I would just love 15-20 minutes of your time to like learn, you know, introduce myself. He actually didn't get back to me for like a month. I'm pretty sure, like, you know, Salesforce people get spam with messages all the time. I didn't really know that. But he messaged me back, and he didn't say anything. He said something funny like, oh, you look familiar. I was like, wait, hold on. Like, what do you mean? Like, I don't know you, you know? So I was like, oh, do you do you go to Lou's Sandwiches? Because that's where I was working, you know? I was like, you might recognize me because I work there, which is across the street. He's like, no, that's not it. But like, I would love to chat. So we set up a conversation, and we chatted, and we connected really well. Right after, you know, he was getting to know my life, getting to know me. I didn't really have any technical question for him because, like, to be like, at the time I was just learning, right? It was more like just like a career guidance, like a life guidance. And then we became like really good friends just from talking over the phone. And he ultimately gave me my first role because for some reason, Calabrio had a position that was opening, and the first person he thought about was me because he had a really good conversation with me. And I trust me, I saw that job description. I don't know why they hired me, to be honest with you. Like, I did not fit any of it. They had CPQ.
Same Z's.
They had CPQ. They had service. They have every single Salesforce product. It was insane, massive org. But he's like, you know what? Like, just apply anyways, right? I apply anyways, and like I said, he called me on my birthday and told me I got the job. So, power of mentorship right there. I would say.
Lord, Tony, let's keep it down here. I got to keep it under control. You're gonna make me all teary-eyed over here. No, but that's like fantastic, and I know the job market or the ecosystem has changed. You know, since COVID, right? COVID was fast moving. Everyone was hiring. Salesforce was hiring out of the SIs, so it was kind of basically pulling everybody up and opening slots, and things have changed considerably since the layoffs from last year. Everything's kind of filtered back down the other way. And so It's kind of made it a little more complicated. The market is a lot more muddled. I was talking with Emma about this earlier or yesterday. You know, there's inflation on certs, right? Like you need 15 certs now to get an admin job. And it's like, wait, what? Like, you know, how much experience do you have when you have a ton of certs and no real experience yet, right? And that actually works against you because now you have certs with no foundational background or experience to actually build upon it. So it's really kind of changed. So our next question here, and this hits the same point. Oh, Rob, I see you. I'm going to ask one question and I'll come back around to you. So many individuals in the audience, right, they're here for this very reason, right? How to break in the ecosystem. There's two things hard, as we always say on here. One is getting that first cert, and that thing is emotional in its own right. And then second is trying to break it into the ecosystem and the experience. The good thing is the ecosystem is very open with things like this. People are very open to talking about it and helping. But so many individuals in our experience, maybe aspiring Salesforce professionals, looking to learn and grow with limited resources support. How do you recommend they approach seeking out mentors and leveraging educational resources such as online courses or training platforms to accelerate their learning journey? That's a 5-pointer right there.
So how do you seek out mentorship, and then how do you approach learning at the current like state of like the job market, kind of? So how do you seek out mentorship? I mean, to be honest with you, with everyone on the call, I think it's one of those things where it's like, you know, you do have to put yourself out there, right? Like that's not the fun part. I remember I hated doing that. I was a big introvert. I think I'm still an introvert. I don't know. I might have became like an extrovert. I don't know. But it was really difficult for me reaching out to people. But I just knew I had to, because I had to build a support structure, right? Like if I knew that if I didn't do that, then I won't be successful or like get where I want to be. So I knew I had to build a support structure. So I would say, like, you know, connect with people. Even on this call, there's like a lot of great resources, right? So like spend some quality time with individuals, and then making sure that like you build this relationship. You know, mentor-mentee relationship. At the end of the day, all relationship, if you think about it, are kind of the same, right? Because the word relationship is still there. So I would say, like, don't think about it too much, right? Don't think about it like, don't treat it like it's mentor or mentee relationship. Treat it like it's your friendship. Treat it like it's, you know, any other relationship that you have in your life. And I think going in with that mindset kind of helps. And, you know, I still apply that today. And then to your second question is learning. Yeah, it's crazy how much cert you need to have nowadays to like really get there. But I think one of the most important things is building like a portfolio, with, you know, obviously creating a dev org, or like just go through Trailhead and build portfolios. And, you know, when you get to those interviews, you can really shine when you can show people what you create. So I think doing those hands-on experience. So to end it, I have a really good story. A week ago, my mentee that I taught Salesforce to from Pep-Up Tech last year reached out to Evan and I, was like, oh, hey, like I finally got my job. Like we knew she was like a star student. We knew she was really good, right? But like everyone, like it's a tough market. And so I asked her, I was like, so what do you think you did differently versus everyone else? She said during her interview, she demoed like what she had built in her dev org, you know, and they were so impressed with that, especially if you're breaking into the Salesforce ecosystem and you're already showing people that like, hey, I can do this. It's like no brainer.
Yeah, I was just talking about that today. Is, you know, occasionally people with bad judgment will put Nava and I on hiring panels and stuff like that, right? And we usually see it. We're not really looking at entry folks coming into Salesforce, but same thing, right? I could see a resume and you can talk all day, but if you can show me how you solved a use case, right? Here was something I saw that was a problem, and I took this org and I build it to solve a pain point. What else can you do, right? That's the job. Architected it, build it out. Rob Rothwell, you have a question? Sorry, it's been so long. You were like not even waiting anymore. Oh, you're still muted. You might be double muted. I'll go to Elio and then we'll come back to you, Rob, or if you can type it out, we'll get it. Elio, good to see you.
David, can you hear me?
I can.
It's been a while for me. It's good to come home to the Wednesday night call. I don't have a question, but I have a comment, and I think Tony hit it there. Number one, understand what a mentor and mentee is all about. Understand what a brand promoter is, and offer before you take. So I've been in this ecosystem. Actually, this year marks 20 years that I've been using Salesforce, either as a client of Salesforce or the 10 years that I spent at Salesforce. And I connect with people still online on LinkedIn, people who reach out and kind of want to get to know me before they go, hey, you work at Hilton and you were at Salesforce. Can I have a job?
Yeah.
You got to think about what is your ultimate goal, and you got to think about what is that person you're reaching out to, what are they going through? Just because somebody has a role, you just can't assume that everything is fine and dandy there. I mean, I was at Salesforce for 10 years, loving life. From one day to another, I was part of the 8,000 folks that got laid off, right? Yes, I landed in an awesome company, Hilton, and it's great to own an org. And, unlike Salesforce, where I think I waited a little bit to get mentors, I'm in my 8th month at Hilton, and I already have 2 mentors. I'm already talking about my brand with people and how to grow my career within Hilton. So I'm applying what I learned from my past. But I started by offering sessions internally. I actually built a template on how to do mentor-mentee sessions. So I'm applying what I learned in my career in my current role. And I've had some awesome connections with people who I've never met, who had a plan, who said, hey, do you have a few minutes to chat? And they actually cared and took the time to ask about me. And then, of course, 4 or 5 sessions into it, they're like, hey, by the way, how do you get successful in this industry? So it wasn't, if you're in a situation where you got to pay the bills, you got to pay the bills. I get it. You got to go get a job. But if you want to have longevity in this industry, you really have to think about a strategy where you're learning and growing yourself and providing some type of value as others are taking you in and mentoring you. That was my comment that I wanted to say.
No,
and thanks,
I think that, Elio, I'm sorry I cut you off. I think that's spot on, right? Is being authentic, right? Like, just because of the luck of the position I've been in, I think Dave can say the same thing. We get a lot of contacts, right? And you can figure out who's authentic pretty quick, right? And just the manner at which they approach you. And I'm not trying to say that in some snooty manner, but like I've had people like say, hello, my name is so-and-so, can you refer me? And I'm like, I don't know who you are, right? Like, so at least let's have a conversation. Yeah. Rob, is it working? Yeah, I can.
Okay, great, thanks. Unlike Tony, my background was more, I was my past 13 years was a solutions engineer, but for a proprietary, but very deep and wide platform, and then they had to do some massive layoffs here at the end of last October. And so I wanted to not be stuck in that position again, where what I've been working on isn't really anything but a scattered number of people across the globe have worked on before. But so all this technology stuff, whereas Tony was coming from, gosh, I don't know anything about X or Y or Z, you know, there's a whole bunch of stuff that I know, but I don't know Salesforce. And it's like, it does sound like this portfolio type of idea is the way to go, you know, like immediately upon touching every one thing, I'm like, gosh, if I could just solve my local Franklin County Veteran Service Office problem where they obviously have zero automation in, you know, getting back to me when I ask them a question, when you send it to the, you know, the email address or whatever. So it's like, or gosh, there isn't anybody that could clean up data like I can with the tools I still have access to from my past 13 years or things like that. So it's sort of like, how do you find the mentor, I guess, to bring it to this conversation that can appreciate your like past experience in that way and help you find the best, you know, route? Because you're all starting at the same place anyway, right? You're going to get your Salesforce administrator certificate first and whatever that means. You know, you're not going straight for the developer, even though you've been programming in Smalltalk and Python and whatever for however many years. So it's sort of that kind of a question, you know, like how do you take all this stuff that you have and then lay it on top of the new stuff that you're doing and still have that mean something so that you're not just like, you know, looking for that first thing with, like, it's not like you don't have any experience with working with data, with solving these types of problems, with working with customers, with being a consultant. Like all that stuff is already in place, but you still need to know the platform, you know? So
Yeah, and I think I'll take a stab at that and we'll pass it over to Tony. And then Christopher L., I see your hand. And Amanda, I think I saw your hand come up for a second too, and I'll get you to just a second. Rob, to answer that, and I'll pass it to Tony. I think you know, when you're looking for that mentor, you got to find the mentor that fits your use case, right? Like I see Sally Al Ghul's on here, right? A developer in Salesforce. If you have a different developer skill set, right? Particularly Java or front-end developers who are good at HTML, JavaScript, CSS, but they don't know Salesforce, you got to find someone that's a developer in Salesforce so they can help hone you to the specifics of the platform, right? Like in your case, you're talking about completely different tech stack now. Finding someone like Dave Nava who knows the tech stack pretty well and can kind of help direct you and go like, yeah, you understand this, but let's look at this. Tony, you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think you definitely hit the point there. Another thing too I want to point out is yeah, like just create your personal branding, right? Create. So like as you building content on LinkedIn or like Twitter, I think everyone here should be on Twitter, especially when not Twitter, X. Salesforce ecosystem is really important to create like a personal branding, right? So Rob, like if you have done all those things before and it's that's what you're good at, and if that's what you like to do and continue doing, create a personal branding around that, right? So like making content around that. And then once you do that, you will just naturally attract those type of individuals as well, you know. And then if they're communicating with you through posts or through X, then you know it's a lot easier to make that connection with those individuals because they already have like a warm connection with you by interacting with your posts. So I think that's one way you can approach it as well to find your future mentor in that space.
And Christopher, before I go to you, Rob, I think you hit on something too, and Tony, you kind of hit it as well. As we, you know, what did Iris write? It was raining jobs in Salesforce in 2020 and 2021, and now it's not, right? So now you have to find ways to kind of find the niche to get yourself hired, right? CPQ, CRMA, public sectors, industry solutions, things like that, that might make you stand out. Or finding other skill sets, AWS, Google, things that you're not only in just the Salesforce niche, right? Now that Salesforce has suddenly got maybe a little flooded, how do you kind of expand that out? And I know Dave and I have talked about that as well. Like I'd like to start working on some AWS stuff just because of our things. Christopher L., you have a question, sir.
Not really a question, just a comment from having done some mentoring in the past couple of years. For those out there who are even just getting into the ecosystem, or you've got your first new job, there are people just a few months behind you who would love to have your insights and help understanding how you got there, because that next step is often, as Tony and the others have put it, it's one of the hardest steps. So, you know, those new folks in there, I would encourage you, let people know, hey, reach out. I love to talk. I've had a lot of different conversations that way. The first year and a half that I was working as a consultant, and they are fun. For the mentees, I would say, and this didn't happen to me until a few months ago. You know, if you reach out to someone, you schedule, show up. You know, the first year or so, I had like 8 or 9 conversations. People showed up. They were, you know, if they had to reschedule, that was fine. But I had 2 people just not show up at least twice after rescheduling, and it was weird. You know, these were not people I had met before. But yeah, just show up and appreciate the person's time. But it's a very rare thing. It hasn't happened very often. And I got to say, with the Salesforce Ohana, I didn't expect it to. You know, people are really giving of their time. They're really happy to talk usually. And then I guess the last thing is a shout out to not just the formal Salesforce mentor program that's now available, but also Act Now and Veterati, specific for military folks. Great resources. They don't always have Salesforce people there, but still a great resource. Yeah, that's all I had.
No, I think those are great points, right? The ecosystem is so unique, especially having come from, you know, a little bit of a hard dog-eat-dog world with the Army and Coast Guard. My background, I know Dave went through the same thing in aviation. It was a little, you had mentorship, but not like this. This ecosystem is very unique in how open it is and how people are willing to talk and communicate and connect, which brings us to the next thing. And Christopher, you kind of hit on it, the old imposter syndrome. And it happens every day. And it doesn't matter. And Tony's already smiling. Like, you think it's only when you're new. Nope, it just keeps going. So Tony, how do you think mentorship can help individuals overcome imposter syndrome or self-doubt, especially, and this happens all the time, especially when transitioning into a new career field like tech?
I mean, I wish I can. Someone tell me the answer to that, right? Like
right?
I mean, a lot of times that's what I just tell people is like, you know, what you're feeling is very valid, right? And it's very common. I'll be surprised to run into people where you don't feel like that. Maybe not all the time, maybe less time, but like it's still there, right? Like regardless of what it is. I mean, almost 4 years in, and you know, I speak at many different like Salesforce events and, you know, session. Sometimes I still can't help but feel like that, you know, and I think it is okay. Like, I think it is human nature almost to feel like that. And I think people just need to know that you can relate with them on that. It's kind of what helps.
Yeah, agreed. Mr. Nava.
Yeah, so, you know, I go back and forth on this. I have imposter syndrome every single day, but I think that, you know, a little bit of imposter syndrome is a healthy practice to cultivate, right? Because it keeps you hungry. It keeps you focused on continuing to add value. And I think that's one of the reasons why I'm still employed, is because I don't just do the things that I'm supposed to do, right? As an SC, you're supposed to build demos and develop relationship with customers, but I'm also adding value in other ways because I'm afraid that if I don't, like, you know, I'm not doing enough. And so that imposter syndrome keeps me going, keeps me motivated, and keeps me innovating. Now, there's obviously, it's a spectrum, right? So if you've got it too much, you can be on the other end where, you know, you've got anxiety and it can get out of hand. So you want to temper it. But I don't know that it ever goes away if you're doing what you should be doing, which is continually growing.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, Dave and I work with some heavy hitters, what they call the distinguished solution engineers, right? They've been doing it for 8-10 years at least. at Salesforce, and they'll still admit like, oh yeah, I get it all the time. You're like, oh boy, if you get it, we're doomed, you know? And I think Dave's kind of right. When you start getting a little cocky, the nice thing about this industry is, you know, it's not like if we put some bad code in, anyone, like the sun's not going to go down or anything, but there are dollars involved, right? And there is business involved. But you can, I know I have gotten a little cocky where I'm like, I got this, I know it, and just made a not great solution. And that not great solution will show up in 6 months, 12 months when it's running at scale. So we are at the midpoint, just a little past the midpoint of the session. Before I forget, let's get a group photo. This is where I like to put my mouth open and take a horrible picture for social media the next day. It's important though, we always like to need to be branding. We'll plan on posting this on LinkedIn and Twitter tomorrow, or X. And we'll tag everyone in the photo. If you only have your first name showing in Google Meet and want to be tagged, please feel free to include your full name in the chat window. It makes it much easier for us to find you. And for everyone who wants to participate in the photo, please unmute your video and we'll grab a screenshot. I'll give you a countdown. Please don't send any messages real quick, and I'll give you a countdown. This is where I have to shut my mouth. All right, 3, 2, 1. Oh man, I actually pulled it off for once. It'll probably make my computer freeze.
The only time I look at the camera when I talk.
Yeah, right. So, Tony, as someone who's experienced the importance of community firsthand, right, continuing the mentorship, what advice would you give to transitioning service members and veterans on leveraging mentorship and community resources within Salesforce ecosystem to support their career transition? I probably read that too quickly for you.
How do you leverage the community to help with your career transition? Ooh.
I stumped you.
Yeah, no, I mean, to be honest, I think what you guys have here is a very special community. Like, I've always been like all of like the military program. Like, I don't know how y'all do it, but I've been involved with a lot of like different programs. And like, I think you guys kind of have like the gold standard of like what a community should look like. So I think just acknowledging that like this is a very special community and there's a lot of amazing people leading this community and there's a lot of great resources in this community as well. Don't be afraid to like ask for help, right? Like, no questions is stupid questions. I feel like I ask stupid questions almost every day. If there's a question and if you need help with something, like, don't be afraid to reach out and ask. You'd be surprised how many others are like think the same or like have those questions as well. So I think just don't be shy about it. Just reach out and be vulnerable. I think that's also key, is to be vulnerable and you know, utilize the resource, because what you guys have here is very special.
Man, Tony, you should start writing Christmas cards, man. No, thank you for that. And I agree. Not only do you have the ecosystem, right, the Salesforce ecosystem, which is very open, but the military community also kind of ties it even tighter, right? Because we all kind of know each other's backgrounds too, right? So it just kind of helps out a little more. And I know Dave, myself, Geraldine, and others on here definitely kind of bend to try and help others coming into it, right? Because we know what the process is, and it's not fun. I think sometimes people are like, "Oh, Dave Nava or Dave Albright or Geraldine, you're at Salesforce, you know, look at you," and you're like, "Yeah, but there's some emotion along the way and some other stuff. You know, there's definitely some ups and downs." Can you share a personal experience, kind of on the same lines, where mentorship not only provided the professional guidance, but also served as a source of emotional support and connection with the Salesforce community?
Yeah. So one of my other mentor, his name is Justin. I don't know if you guys know him or not, but he was the co-founder of Arcus Inc. It's a really big nonprofit in New York. He was part of the board member for Pep Up Tech. They're super involved with like hiring a lot of like Pep Up Tech members. But when I was, just on Twitter, being active on, I keep saying Twitter, but it is Twitter. Twitter, he actually reached out to me on there and was like, "Oh, I just love like your perspective on things and like, the content I was creating or writing on there." He wanted to like just to get to know me. I didn't really know who this guy was until I met him. Probably one of the most down-to-earth guy ever. I mean, he obviously had a very successful career, with Arcus and what he has been doing, but he gave me so much valuable lesson in terms of like professional growth, right? Like what he was able to achieve, owning a company, a successful company, hiring 50, 60 people, and retiring at a really young age. He just gave me so much knowledge. And I know like no matter what question I have with my career or like where I want to go or things I should say to my boss, like he's there to like give me those feedback. He gave me whether I like it or not, he will give me those feedback, right? And sometimes like those are the individuals that you need to talk to. Like they're not trying to ice anything down. They're just gonna just throw it at you and see how you handle it. But sometimes those things are what we need to hear. So he have helped me so much in my career. Anytime I run into an issue or not like technical issues, more of like career, like, hey, I don't really know where I want to go next, things like those type of questions. He's there to give me guidance. So that's like kind of like my personal take on that.
Yeah, I think you need, and the military side of this is good in that we kind of grew up in a world where someone could tell you suck, right? And you and you just took it and you're like, ugh, I suck. And it hurts. And you go in the shower and cry. That's what I always did. No one can see the tears there. But I think that kind of, for better or for worse, hardened us. And you need to kind of find people that can tell you when you're wrong. That's important. And I think the emotional side, I know, and I know I've told it on here before, but I'll very quickly recap. I passed my admin cert and it was probably a luck, and I did enough focus on force. I did every question on focus on force like twice. I failed sales consultant next. And then I failed platform app builder twice, 2 times in a row right after that. And that was a low, quite a low. I was like, that's it. I figured it out. I finally figured out I'm not supposed to be here. And then I talked to someone and they're like, hey man, no one knows how many times you failed. They only know that you passed. And that really helped. And, you talk to a couple other people and you start to see that failing is not exactly rare with these certs, right? And you just kind of pick up and go on and, and that's all there is to it. And then as you get more of them, you start to realize like, okay, you either get more foundational knowledge or you realize like, hey, these things they're not really realistic as to your config capabilities, right? It's really the test. So, but that was definitely an emotional time for me. And I was thinking like, I'm going back to aviation. Iris, you have a question.
First of all, I love this community where we can just all be so honest. That was so important for you to share, David, just because I meet people every day who are like still pulling their hair out. And I'm like, no, it's okay. Trust me. Everyone has a hard time. People still have PTSD over the first letter, so it's okay. And they don't believe me. Yeah. Hearing you say that on this platform is so helpful. And Tony, thank you for being here. Thank you for sharing your experiences. It's so valid and what's really needed right now. I just wanted to add something though, and I think David hinted towards it in the chat about getting mentors with different perspectives. And I always say that I meet people and they're like, oh, so I tried this one mentor and it didn't work. And I'm like, And then they were like, well, so I didn't try it again. And I'm like, well, I'm really sorry, but not everybody likes Iris, and Iris, believe it or not, doesn't like absolutely everybody else. Well, there's some, I love most people though, but it takes a little bit of time to connect with somebody, to open yourself up for that magic of mentorship to happen. There's different kind of mentors where you're looking to learn about someone's role, looking to learn about what you don't like, but then taking the time to connect with somebody for that magic of mentorship to happen. So don't be deterred, kind of thing.
Yeah, I think, and it's hard to, I think tech kind of values introverts in a lot of ways, right? Like we go to our computer screens. I've said it recently a couple times. I'm starting to value, don't judge me for this. I'm starting to value, maybe it's my older age or work from home, my computer more than human interaction. And I know that is not good. I know that is not good. But my computer does not have all the messy, Nava's laughing. It doesn't have all those messy human emotions, right? My computer does or does not based on my inputs, right? If I put poop into it, I get poop out of it. And it doesn't get wonky. It doesn't respond differently on Mondays versus Fridays, or, you know, birthdays and things like that. I can forget its birthday and it doesn't get upset, I think. So yeah, but you do need to kind of take that time. My point being is to reach out and find mentors. You need to find people that can help you on the journey and the path, give you guidance, give you tips, prop you up when you feel like a complete moron and you don't know what a master detail is. I tell that story because that truly happened to me. So our next question, and this is kind of really for what I think a lot of the crowd in the session is here for, entry level, trying to come in to the ecosystem, right? It's kind of tough right now. Entry level talent entering the world of Salesforce consultancy. What should they expect in terms of mentorship and support from senior consultants or leaders within the organization?
I feel like if I answer this question, it's going to reflect on where I'm at and not all consultancy, right?
That's fair.
I think that one thing that I have experienced so far when it comes to mentorship within a consultant world is that I think it's harder to obtain. I think it is easier to find a mentor or to learn about Salesforce if you're working at an org with a manager. I feel like those type of roles, they often are willing to train you more. That's kind of like been my personal take, because at a consultant world, people move really fast. Each of our hour is $1 amount, right? If I spend an hour or two with you, that's $200 an hour. That's $400, right? Like that we're quote unquote wasting or whatever, if, you know, especially if you're building client. So I think it's harder to obtain mentorship within the consultancy world, unless you're at a consultant company that have programs for new individuals with no Salesforce background. At those companies, you will have the ability to, you know, obviously learn because they have a program for it. They have to teach you how to use, like, you know, Salesforce. But if you go to, like, say, at a company that don't have those kind of program, expect to drink from the fire hose, because you will, right? It's like, I'm going to throw you in the ocean, and whether you know how to swim or you don't really have an option. And I think currently at the current, like, economic scale, is more true than before. Just because business is more rough right now, right? Don't want to scare anyone off though, because being a consultant is really fun. You get to learn. You learn a lot, right? If you get thrown into the ocean and you can swim, you'll be a really, really good swimmer. So that's kind of like the positive side to it.
Yeah, I agree. I think I always confirmation bias, right? This is the route that I went, and a lot of folks on here have gone, and that was get an admin and then come in and go to a consultancy, of which your learning is geometric, and that's why I keep joking about the master detail. I came on as a 1099, and the first user story I said was create an MD, an M-D on this. And I was like freaking out, like literally freaking out. I was like pinging one of my coworkers, and I was like, "What's an MD? I have no idea what an MD is," and it was pathetic. But you know, that's part of it, right? That is just the nature of learning. And someone finally was like, "It's a master detail," and I was like, "Awesome, it's a master detail." And you know, somehow I stayed. So yeah, that's just part of it, right? And you have to find folks that you can kind of lean on and kind of go through that, right? And who will give you the time to work through that. So now that you've kind of shifted into more of the mentor position in the consultancy, how do you kind of look for mentees as they're coming in?
Yeah, so a lot of the projects that I work on, and if I'm working like someone that's lower than me, a lot of times like at different level, you're kind of like are tasked with certain things. As you get higher, you are tasked with, you know, doing more of the technical configuration. So a lot of times, like I like to give those to, you know, associates or like people that are kind of new to the Salesforce ecosystem, and then provide them the ability to like work on these, you know, user stories or configuration, but also at the same time, kind of like I'm not telling them that I'm checking on their work, but like behind the scene I am, right? Just to make sure that like you're not building something bad for the client. So kind of give them the space to explore how to config, but also at the same time, like making sure they're doing it correctly. And then a lot of times we just like end up gathering around and like, you know, have one-on-one session. I think more people need to do that, right? Like more of the coaching, giving the ability and the trust for junior associates to take on harder tasks, because it's one of those things where it's like, if they don't do it, how would they learn, right? And if you're not the person that is giving them that ability, then who will, right? So that's always like my mindset when it comes to projects.
Yeah, I think that's awesome, because it's really hard, right? Because you know there are dollars to those hours, right? This comes up frequently on here, and it's worth repeating, is how long do you beat your head against the keyboard to try and solve something? Because every slap of your forehead on that keyboard is another dollar or so that you're not getting work done for the client. And I used to go through this a lot. I realized that my personality is, as soon as I'm stuck, I go to someone. And I don't know if that's necessarily the best way. I think sometimes, like when Geraldine and I worked together, I realized Geraldine had way better Google food than I did. Geraldine could find anything on Google. I was like an idiot. I could never find anything. She'd find stuff like that, and I'm like, meh. I think I should have just asked Geraldine to find stuff for me. That should have been my smart move. But it's key to, like, you have to grow, and it's scary to try and start stuff on your own, right? Even building that dev org on your own. But when you actually get a user story assigned to you in a sprint, and you're like, I have no idea what to do. Do you try and Google it and work it out? Do you try and go to documentation, or do you go to a mentor? And so I'll kind of put that back to you, Tony. Like, what's your thoughts on how long you should beat your head against the keyboard?
I think I'm kind of the same way. I will like run through all the scenario that I possibly can with my current knowledge. But I think I forgot who told me this, or I heard it from like one of these like speaking session where someone said, as you grow, as you get higher in your career, the more you Google.
Yeah.
And I find that to be true. Like, because a lot of, like, as you gaining more experience, right? The only time you Google are when you get stuck. Because if you don't know something, you kind of just end up Googling it. And as you get higher, you are solving more complex issues. And you just end up Googling more. I only will call my helpline if Google can't help me, or Chat GPT if we're talking about AI.
Good old Chat GPT.
Yeah, it's surprisingly how crazy it is.
Yeah.
But if those two cannot help me, then I will call my helpline. But normally, I mean, if I'm getting to the point where I'm banging my head on the desk, or I'm pulling my hair, or if I need to go for a walk to breathe, then yes, it's Google time for sure.
Yeah, and I think that's part of it too. As you get more experience in the beginning, you're already really suffering the imposter syndrome. You don't have the foundational background or experience yet. You just don't have that rucksack full of things I've done. Like I built a master detail, or I built a custom object. You don't have that to pull from to be like, oh yeah, I'm just going to whip this out. I know how to do this. And as you start to see more, you start to feel more confident, and you start to go, okay, I got it. Like there is a way out of this. I just have to Google it, figure it out, or there's documentation. I think sometimes part of that imposter syndrome is we believe we should just know all this stuff right off the bat. Sally, who runs the military Trailblazer office hours for Code with Sally on Thursday nights, we'll talk about it all the time, right? She's an experienced developer, been doing it since 2010, but still has documentation open on the other screen at all times, right? Because you cannot know all this stuff, nor do you want to try and remember it all, right? You got better things to do. What we're doing is we're using code and config to solve small problems, right? So you just kind of go over, Google it, remember how to do it. I know Dave and I will constantly crack open previous demos and look at like, how did I do that once before? I remember I used an image in the record, go look at it, bring that over, right? Or then we'll ping each other. So yeah, it's interesting to hear how you kind of problem solve now and switched into more of that mentor role, and how you kind of pick it. Is there anything you look for in particular in your mentees? Is there anything that kind of draws you to certain people?
To me, I think if they take initiative and, if they willing to give their time, then I'm willing to give my time, right? Yeah. I mean, Evan and I compare mentor and mentees almost like dating. It's kind of funny. But you can't really date everybody, I hope. But it's kind of like that, right? Like sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, and it's okay, right? Sometimes people don't show up. That's okay. Sometimes people follow up and sometimes they don't, and that's okay. So like for me, I don't pick my mentees. If I'm on a call with you and we click and you follow up with me and, I follow up with you and the conversation continue, that's it for me. And then, I'm there, whatever they need help. Some of my mentees are successful mentees where I haven't talked to them in a year, they end up becoming user group leaders and probably would become future MVPs. And I'm just here on the sideline cheering for them, but it's like that support structure is still there. They just no longer need you, and that's okay too.
Yeah, I think the same. I think some of us on this call will probably say the same thing, right? Really just showing authentic interest, right? I'm looking for help. How can you please help me, right? Those words alone, like, yeah, I'll do what I can to help. We can't get everything done, but we do the best we can. So for your closing question, Tony, your Salesforce journey is truly inspiring. Like I said, when I read your story and the golden hoodie and stuff, I was like, oh man, like I thought I pivoted. You definitely got me beat there. So for our audience members seeking a sense of belonging, connection within the Salesforce ecosystem, what final words of encouragement or advice would you offer as they navigate their own path to professional fulfillment? Yeah.
I mean, I don't think in terms of technology, I don't think you're going to find a sense of belonging in a community anywhere else besides Salesforce. The word Ohana that's coming from Salesforce, they actually mean it, is there. You just have to find it. right? Whatever that is, it could be the military group. It could be, like Pep Up Tech is a minority group. So that's a lot of time I focus on that. There's a group for everybody, right? Especially with like the Salesforce Trailblazer community groups. There's a group for everybody. We just have to find what that is and what it is for you. You have to able to answer that question first before you go out and explore, right? And if you don't have that question, feel free just to dab into a lot of different groups and see which one works better for you and connect with you. But yeah, for those who are seeking and those, who want to find that, it's out there. It's out there. And once you find it, it is very magical. I promise you that.
Yeah. The speed dating with groups. That's pretty funny. Hey, Dave, what are you doing later? So before we close, I'd like to thank Tony for co-hosting tonight's session. It's been awesome having you here and all your input, getting your perspective on the topics we have discussed. With that, I'd like to thank you all for attending. We hope to see you next, I guess, in 2 weeks, and have a great Wednesday night.